And Nana says, prayer requests for all members of the LGBTQ plus community. Trump has made them targets. They were already targets. They were already targets. Trump didn't make them a target. Trump gave license for them to be hunted. Trump gives license for them to be persecuted. Trump gives license for them to be excluded and ostracized. Trump gives license for people to be the worst version of themselves, and to let their hatred overtake them and abound. Their hatred to dictate how they will behave, how they will act, what they will say, who they will love and tolerate. You know, we look at this administration, and it's easy for us to say this is the problem, he's the problem, but he's not. I know. I know what you. Oh yes, he's not the problem. The problem is a system that put a person like that in power. The problem is a system that elevated someone like that for a position like the presidency of the United States. That's the problem. The system itself needs to be reevaluated. And no, I'm not talking about the Constitution. I'm talking about. I think I'm talking about how capitalism intersects with democracy in the United States. How greed intersects with democracy and public service. I think a reevaluation of the system in terms of the power structure and the power dynamics that are at play. I think all of this needs to be looked at, reevaluated, and perhaps recreated, restored. But he's a symptom. He is a really horrible symptom, don't get me wrong, right? Like, he's a rash on the inside of your eyelid. He's that kind of horrible symptom, but he's not the disease itself. You know, the church, I was going to talk about this a little bit later, and we still will. But this is where the church needs to stand up and make its voice heard. Because I really do believe that the church and people of faith, people of integrity, and people of love, I think there's a responsibility on our part. Now, you know, we have a tendency to be quiet when the world is quieter, right? Not necessarily that it's good, and no, the system isn't working better, but we're not feeling put out by it. We're not feeling overwhelmed by it, and so we'll just go through life. And then something like this administration comes along, and we go, oh, this is the worst thing ever. Yes, it is. Again, it's a rash underneath your eyelid. It's that bad, but we need to understand, I think we need to understand that it is absolutely essential for us to be speaking out against a system that would put someone like him in power, even when someone like him isn't in power. Even when our person is in power, the person we would have chosen is in power, we need to speak up against the system that can put someone like that in power. We need to call for its reevaluation and for its correction. It's hard, right? It's hard to get ourselves motivated to fight the power. If I could steal a line from Public Enemy, it's hard to get ourselves motivated to fight the power when the power structure at the moment is currently good for us, but we still have to do it. I remember, this might be a little off topic, but I remember reading an article about Dee Snider. So Dee Snider was a singer for Twisted Sister. And, he talked about them being a band really early on, and there was like them and 2 or 3 other bands, and they were all sharing like a 2-bedroom apartment. So there was like 14 guys living in this 2-bedroom apartment. And they would take shifts sleeping, depending on who was working at the time, and they were all playing gigs at night. And he said, they're half starving to death. And so when they came out with "We're Not Gonna Take It," that big, huge, massive rock anthem of theirs, it was fueled by anger and frustration with the system. It was fueled by their literal hunger and malnutrition and the cramped life that they were living. It was fueled by that angst. And then he said, when it came time to sit down and write one of our albums, I looked around from my pool, my massive house, the cars in the garage, beautiful family. I didn't feel that angst anymore. I didn't feel that frustration. I didn't have the fuel. I will take all of this, basically, right? We're not going to take it. Oh, but I like this, so I don't know what to write about. Well, we still have that responsibility. You and I still have that responsibility to stand up and say, this is broken. It's broken. And we got to fix it. Even when we're not being put out by it. He is a symptom. Trump is a symptom. But the problem is something deeper. The problem is something much deeper. Amen.